everyone. I'm Barbara Ash, National Director of the Veteran Institute for Procurement, and welcome to the final session of VIP's Continuing Education Workshop Series. All roads lead to GSA. We've covered a lot of ground together over these 4 sessions, and you've had a very unique opportunity to hear from a legal small business expert who set the stage from a historical perspective by analyzing the federal government procurement data and how current policies may impact your company going forward. That was followed by the government perspective. You heard from a GSA procurement leader who explained their policy priorities. And on Tuesday, you learned the tactical engagement strategies and how to assess your company's GSA readiness, how to determine which schedule best aligns with your company's goals, and how to perform and remain compliant on a GSA schedule. And today, we're bringing it all together with a roadmap to growth using GSA contracts and GWACS. These sessions have been designed specifically for veteran business owners like you, giving you the opportunity to dive deep into the key topics shaping today's procurement landscape. Our goal has been to empower you and your business to take full advantage of the opportunities at GSA. And today, we're going to show you exactly how you chart your path forward. This workshop series is brought to you by the Veteran Institute for Procurement in partnership with the United States Small Business Administration. It is an extended training benefit for VIP grads, current applicants, and any veteran small business owner committed to maximizing their business potential. Before we dive in, I want to give you a reminder about 2 outstanding opportunities happening next month. VIP offers specialized training, all at no cost to veteran entrepreneurs. And our VIP Advance and VIP Aerospace are scheduled for February, and we're down to just a few remaining spots. These programs are only offered once a year, and applications accepted on a first-come, first-served basis. If you've been on the fence, this is your moment. Visit nationalvip.org today and apply before these last spots are gone. Now, I am thrilled to introduce our speaker for today's session, Brian Friel. Brian is a federal contracts expert with 2 decades of experience analyzing the business of government. Using a big data approach, Brian and his company, BD Squared, have assisted dozens of companies in winning major contract vehicles, including Alliant 2, Oasis, Oasis Plus, Polaris, FBI ITS 2, CIOSP 4, STARS 3, Seaport Next Gen, and VETS 2. His company has also provided Gate Zero reviews of more than 9,000 task order level opportunities, helping contractors win more than $6 billion in task orders on those vehicles over the past 6 years. If you want to understand how to strategically position your business for growth through GSA and GWACS, Brian is the expert you need to hear from. We encourage you to engage throughout the presentation. Feel free to submit your questions anytime using the Q&A box on the Zoom toolbar. Please don't use the chat for questions. We'll tackle as many as we can during this session and follow up on any questions we don't get to. And as a reminder, the slides and video recording from today's session will be provided. And now it is a pleasure and honor to introduce and turn it over to Brian Friel. Welcome, Brian.
Thank you so much, Barbara, and thanks very much to the VIP for having me here today. I've really enjoyed all the previous sessions, and I hope this session will give everybody a lot of tactical advice to move forward. To everybody attending today, you guys are all veterans of service to our country, and I really thank you for your service. And I hope that this conversation today will be helpful as you plot your path forward for your federal contracting business. All right, so since Barbara introduced me, I'm going to skip the slide about me. So let me just talk about kind of our focus today is where I'm going to kind of get very tactical and talk about the specific contract vehicles that are out there and how you can position yourself to participate in those contracts. In the first presentation of this series, Sam Lee talked about the revolutionary FAR overhaul, and that the changes that were included in that increased the importance of government-wide contracts. Now agencies are instructed to use government-wide contracts before going out and issuing their own IDIQs or contract vehicles or their own standalone contracts. So over the next year, I think we're going to see a lot of work that has previously been executed on contracts that are not government wide push over to the contracts that I'm going to talk about today. The in our experience, what we have seen is that companies that participate in these contracts tend to greatly increase the valuation of their companies and become more attractive M&A targets. So as you think well ahead into the future about your potential exit strategy, just keep in mind that winning these kinds of contracts increases the valuation of your company and can increase the chances that you are acquired. Over the past year, four of the companies that we work with were acquired by larger businesses, and the fact that they had some of the contracts that Barbara mentioned, we helped them win, contributed to the decision by the acquirers to purchase them. So this presentation is going to be kind of an overview of the landscape of GWACS out there, and then I'm going to talk about how you can get onto these contracts. So first, I wanted to start with kind of an overview of kind of what are the contract vehicles that you need to know. And I'm going to use a lot of acronyms, and I apologize. So if you have any questions about what I mean, sometimes I can get very acronym heavy. Feel free to say, "Hey, what does that mean?" And I will clarify. But to kind of start with a kind of a very simple explanation, the government has two essential mechanisms to put a requirement under contract. The first is just a straight standalone contract where the government issues a RFP on SAM.gov. The RFP lists the requirements. You submit a proposal. The government evaluates your proposal. They decide you're the best company to perform the requirements. They issue you an award and you get the contract. And that's just a simple standalone contract. The second option is a task order on a pre-awarded contract. The GSA schedules that were discussed on Tuesday's call are the third one listed on this slide, and they are one version of that. But essentially, any of these kinds of contracts you are evaluated for participation in the contract. The government will look at your previous performance and other aspects of your company to determine if you have what it takes to participate on the contract. You are then awarded the contract, but when you get that award, the most you're going to get is a couple $1,000s, sometimes even just a few $100 as a minimum guarantee. But the real work comes in subsequently bidding on task orders on these contracts to actually generate revenue for your company. Over the past 30 years, the government has increasingly moved away from standalone contracts to contract vehicles. The initial driver of that was a number of acquisition reforms that occurred in the 1990s that instructed agencies to start using these kinds of contract vehicles. And one of the values to government buyers of using these contracts is that you can make an award much quicker at the task order level on one of these vehicles than you can if you issue a standalone contract on SAM.gov. The revolutionary FAR overhaul that was executed last year and is now being implemented across the government at the agency level further drives agencies to move away from standalone contracts and put their work on government-wide contracts. And also instructs agencies that they should not use agency level IDIQs going forward, but instead, again, should use government-wide contracts. So let's talk about the government-wide acquisition contracts first. That's the first row here on my slide. So government-wide acquisition contracts are specifically IT contracts. Some of them are for commodities, and so often the prime contractors on the commodities contracts are value-added resellers, or the contracts are for services. And the companies that are primes on those contracts are companies that provide IT services to the federal government. There are currently three agencies that run government-wide acquisition contracts. The first one is the General Services Administration, and GSA runs the first list of contracts that are listed in the GWACS section. So Alliant 2, VETS 2, STARS 3, and the Polaris suite of contracts. The second agency that runs government-wide acquisition contracts is the National Institutes of Health in a division of National Institutes of Health called NITAC. And NITAC administers the CIO-SP3, CIO-SP3 small business, and CIO-CS contracts. The CIO-CS contract is a commodities contract. And so the companies that are primes on that vehicle are, again, predominantly value-added resellers. CIO-SP3, small business, and CIO-SP3, the primes on those contracts are IT services companies. And then the third and final agency that runs a government-wide acquisition contract is NASA. And NASA has an office that runs the SOUP program. The current version of SOUP is SOUP 5. That contract is explicitly a value-added reseller contract. But when we talk about kind of opportunities going forward, the new version of SOUP called SOUP 6 will have new services components to it that is not currently available on SOUP 5. The other interesting aspect of these GWACs is that last year President Trump issued an executive order in March that said that GSA should be in charge of all GWACs and gave GSA the authority to control all of the GWACs. So GSA is currently in discussions with NITAC at NIH and the SOUP office at NASA to assume total control of all of the GWACs. So again, the name of this overall series, All Roads Lead to GSA, is particularly appropriate in the GWAC space because all roads are going to lead to GSA. All GWACs will fall under the control of GSA. The folks at NITAC and NASA Soup are currently in discussions with GSA to work out the parameters of the transitions of those programs from NIH and NASA to GSA. And everyone's very tight-lipped right now. They're still figuring out all of the details and the timing. So we don't know when the timing will be for the transition of control of the CIO-SP3 and CIO-CS vehicles from NITAC from NIH to GSA, and control of SOUP from NASA to GSA. All of those discussions are ongoing. They have the executive order set a very quick timeline that we have now well past, so we don't know when these are going to occur. So when I get into discussions about each of those vehicles in the remainder of this discussion, I will talk to you about kind of my own take on what the transition to GSA will mean for those vehicles. And I will spend specific time talking about each of the government-wide acquisition contracts in the remainder of this presentation and discuss how your company can get involved in participation on the vehicles. Those vehicles currently handle billions of dollars of task order requirements from across the government. Every government agency can use these contracts. So even though ultimately GSA will be the administering authority for all of the GWACs, the biggest user of the GWACs is the Department of War and the various military services that comprise the Department of War. So Air Force, Army, Navy, and then the fourth estate agencies in the Department of War, DISA, DITRA, Missile Defense Agency, et cetera. And then all civilian agencies also can use the government-wide acquisition contracts. So the Homeland Security Department, Department of Agriculture, Health and Human Services, Veterans Affairs, Energy, etc. All of these agencies can also use the GWACS. So one value for you as a company is if you become a prime on these GWACs, you have access to requirements coming from throughout the government, both on the civilian side of government and the military side of government. So again, a lot of our focus later in this conversation will be about these GWACs. The second section here that I'll talk about is the government-wide and enterprise-wide contracts. And let me start with OASIS Plus. So OASIS Plus is run by the General Services Administration, and it is a government-wide contract. So again, just like the GWACS, even though GSA administers the OASIS Plus program, all agencies can use it. The Oasis Plus is the second iteration of this vehicle. The previous version was simply called Oasis, and the new version is called Oasis Plus. And it's actually an expanded version of the previous contract. And again, I'll spend some time talking about Oasis Plus later in the conversation. It is not an IT services contract. So as a general rule, IT services requirements should go to the GWACs that are listed in the first line. Anything that's not IT services focused can go to Oasis Plus. And again, I'm going to talk about the scope in a little bit more detail in a few minutes. Besides Oasis Plus, there are a number of enterprise-wide contracts. And I've listed some examples of the enterprise-wide contracts. And by enterprise-wide, I really mean agency-wide. The executive order on procurement consolidation that consolidated control of the GWACS at GSA instructed agencies to reduce their use of enterprise-wide contracts and push the work to government-wide contracts. And the Revolutionary Fire Overhaul did the same thing. It said, stop using agency-level IDIQs and instead push your requirements to government-wide vehicles. But as of today, there are still a good number of enterprise-wide or agency-level vehicles that are in use across the government. So some of those are listed here. The Navy has the Seaport Next Generation contract. That is, again, enterprise-wide, so all of the Navy can use it. It is for both professional services and IT services, and it's operational until the end of calendar 2028. When I talk about Oasis Plus, I'll talk about the potential transition of the Navy Seaport Next Gen work to a vehicle like Oasis Plus. But for now, the Navy is continuing to use Seaport Next Gen. And so professional services and IT services requirements most likely home at the Navy right now is on the Seaport Next Gen contract. The Veterans Affairs Department has a program called T4NG. That contract is for IT services. And that contract again is still active today. The Veterans Affairs Department conducted a recompete of T4NG. The follow-on contract is called T4NG2. The T4NG2 contract was awards were made, but companies that were not selected protested the contract to the Court of Federal Claims, and that Court of Federal Claims case put a stop on action on T4NG2. So for now, T4NG is still operational. What we've seen is that the Veterans Affairs Department, when it has IT services requirements, sometimes it will use T4NG and sometimes it will put the work on other contract vehicles. And GSA schedules is one place where we've seen the VA put work that they had intended to put on T4NG2, but due to the Court of Federal Claims case, cannot put it on T4NG2. As of now, the VA still plans to fight the protests in the Court of Federal Claims and push for award of T4NG2. Their hope is that T4NG2 will be running later this year. Then there's Defense Logistics Agency has a program called JETS 2.0. That's the follow-on to a contract called JETS. That's also for IT services, and that program is still operational. And then the Army has a contract called RS3 for C4ISR kinds of requirements. And the Army also has a contract called ITES 3S. The Army has planned to consolidate the requirements from RS3 and ITES 3S into a new contract called Army MAPS. Last year, after the executive order on procurement consolidation was issued by the White House, the Army put a pause on the MAPS competition and said the Army said that it was evaluating the repercussions of the executive order on procurement consolidation to determine if they should move forward with MAPS or instead move the requirements to existing contracts like Oasis Plus and the IT services GWACS. So when they put a pause on maps, my expectation was that the that maps would not proceed and that the Army would instead make the decision to move the requirements to Oasis Plus that are currently on RS3 and move the ITES 3S requirements, which are IT focused, to the GWACS. Late last month, the Army announced that maps will move forward, and the Army scheduled an industry day at the end of January at Aberdeen Proving Ground for the resurrection of the Army Maps program. I will tell you that the GSA would prefer that the Army use its contracts, but the Army has decided to move forward with maps. And I'm noting this because even though the executive order on procurement consolidation and the FAR overhaul instructed agencies to abandon enterprise level contracts and move the work to the GWACS, there has to be enforcement of that mechanism. And as of now, the Army has decided to move forward on an enterprise-wide contract. So in some ways, that is a test, and in fact, a very large test of the teeth associated with the executive order and the revolutionary FAR overhaul. Will the Army be able to move forward with the MAPS program at the enterprise-wide level? Or will they have to push the requirements to Oasis Plus or GSA schedules or government-wide acquisition contracts? This is a test. We'll see what happens over the next few months, but I would expect to see additional tests over the next few years as agencies contemplate whether they want to follow the executive order on procurement consolidation and the revolutionary FAR overhaul to move requirements to GSA, GWACS, and Oasis Plus, or test the waters and move out on their own enterprise-wide contracts. So we'll see what happens on Seaport Next Gen. As I mentioned, that contract ends in 2028. So GSA would certainly like those requirements to come to Oasis Plus and to the IT services GWACS. Ultimately, it will be the Navy's decision. And on top of that, obviously the White House and the Office of Management and Budget and whether they influence these agencies to abandon enterprise-wide contracts or move the work to Oasis Plus and to the IT services GWACS. This is not a one and done deal where GSA is commanding everybody to move their work to GWACS, to the GWACS and to Oasis Plus. It's really ultimately going to be a negotiation among each agency. But suffice to say that some agencies may try and stand their ground and continue to use enterprise-wide contracts. But many agencies will decide not to do that and instead move their work to Oasis Plus and the IT services GWACS and to the GSA schedules. So the GSA schedules are third on this list. The GSA schedules meet all the criteria that were established in the executive order on procurement consolidation and in the revolutionary FAR overhaul. GSA schedules are government-wide. So even though they are administered by the General Services Administration, any agency can place a task order requirement on the GSA schedules. And then I want to briefly mention the blanket purchase agreements before I wrap up this slide and move to the next one. Blanket purchase agreements, I wanted to flag those. Blanket purchase agreements, as a general rule, are executed underneath the GSA schedules program. So, for example, the Army has a program called AMCOM Express. That is a blanket purchase agreement executed under the GSA schedules for a complex set of requirements associated with missile defense. In order for a company to be a prime on the AMCOM Express contract, they must first be a prime on the GSA schedules. The same for FBI ITSSS-2. That's a contract that the Federal Bureau of Investigation runs for its IT services requirements. FBI ITSSS-2 is a multiple award blanket purchase agreement under the GSA schedules. So all of the companies that are primes on the FBI ITSSS-2 contract blanket purchase agreement were first primes on the GSA schedules, and you could not bid to become a prime on either AMCOM Express or FBI SSS or any other blanket purchase agreement until you were already a prime on the GSA schedules. And then just another example I included here is the Department of Transportation's software contract called SWES 2.0. That again is a blanket purchase agreement on the schedules. So on Tuesday, you had a great presentation about the GSA schedules and how to get on them. And if you missed that conversation, I definitely encourage you to review that presentation because schedules are a very important part going forward of the Revolutionary Fire Overhaul's focus on driving work to government-wide contracts. And blanket purchase agreements are a mechanism for agencies that may want to retain control of their of the of their of the task orders and of the industrial base that they're reaching out to, because they can create a blanket purchase agreement within the GSA schedule program, and because those blanket purchase agreements live within the GSA schedule program, they are in compliance with the Revolutionary Fire Overhaul and the Executive Order on Procurement Consolidation to use government-wide contracts. So if you are not currently on the GSA schedules, I encourage you to get on it because there are many requirements that I would expect to see issued either as direct task orders on the GSA schedules or through the creation of blanket purchase agreements underneath the GSA schedules. And we may see some agencies ultimately decide to go the blanket purchase agreement route as they navigate the executive order on procurement consolidation and the Revolutionary Fire Overhaul to decide how they want to proceed with their requirements. Again, some agencies may decide it's in our best interest to move forward with our own agency level contract. And at this point, I don't expect GSA or even the White House necessarily to push back on that. But they may decide, in order to be in compliance with the executive order and Revolutionary Fire Overhaul, to instead create blanket purchase agreements. Now, what I said about blanket purchase agreements existing exclusively on the GSA schedules is actually not going to be true going forward, because one aspect of the Revolutionary Fire Overhaul that was executed is that multiple award and single award blanket purchase agreements can now be issued under any of the government-wide and under any DIQ or government-wide acquisition contract. So OASIS Plus has already been modified. So an agency can now create a multiple award blanket purchase agreement under OASIS Plus. So now this is me speculating. Let's say the Army is planning on having its industry day at the end of January and plans to move forward with the MAPS contract vehicle as an enterprise level IDIQ. For many reasons that would take me a long time to get into, which I won't today, I don't think that's going to succeed. So ultimately, what the Army could decide to do is instead create blanket purchase agreements within the construct of OASIS Plus that would cover the current scope of Army RS3, and then create multiple award blanket purchase agreements on one or more of the government-wide acquisition contracts to cover the requirements that are currently executed under Army ITES. And I kind of am sort of foot stomping the ability to create multiple blanket purchase agreements on OASIS Plus and the government-wide acquisition contracts, because the ability to do that makes these vehicles even more important than they otherwise would be. Because again, ultimately agencies could decide to create their own kind of homes within the government-wide homes by creating their own blanket purchase agreements on these contract vehicles. I know that was a lot, and I'll let that soak in while I move to the next slide. So now I'm going to get into the specifics of each contract vehicle. And as I mentioned, the conversation on Tuesday focused on the GSA schedules, which I highly encourage you to get onto. So the next one I want you to focus on, besides the GSA schedules, is Oasis Plus. So Oasis Plus is, again, a government-wide contract, and it covers a broad range of requirements. The timing of this presentation is excellent because on January 12th, which was on Monday, Oasis Plus opened for new submissions, and it will remain open for bidders through at least December 2029. This is not a standard practice in the contract vehicle world. These kinds of opportunities to get onto existing contracts are usually quite rare and limited. Most contracts have what is called an on-ramp, and the on-ramp will be open for 60 days and then close. So for most contract vehicles, there are very rare windows of opportunity to get onto the contract as a prime contractor. And so this is a unique but important opportunity for anybody that is either not currently on Oasis Plus or has limited access in terms of the number of domains that it's on. So the second bullet here on this slide lists the 13 domains that are available on Oasis Plus. You can see management and advisory, technical and engineering, research and development. Each of these 13 domains is essentially its own contract. And so Oasis Plus, you can think of it as a suite in which these 13 contracts live. So you as a bidder could submit a proposal on the management and advisory domain. And if you were successful, you would become a prime contractor on the management and advisory domain, and you would be able to see all RFIs and task order level RFPs on the management and advisory domain. And you could obviously bid those. But you would not see any of the RFIs or RFPs on the other 12 domains. So in order to see the RFIs and RFPs and be able to bid on the RFIs and RFPs on the other domains, you have to bid on those domains. So again, there are 13 domains listed here. 8 of them already exist now. Management advisory, technical and engineering, research and development, intelligence, enterprise solutions, environmental, facilities, and logistics. Those 8 domains have been in existence since December of 2024. And we do have some data because, as Barbara mentioned, we do gate zero reviews on all the task orders that come out on Oasis Plus. And so we've seen them all. So there were about 240 task order level RFPs that were issued and awarded in the first year of operation of Oasis Plus. And of those 240, 180 of them were in the management and advisory domain. So by far, the management and advisory domain has been the most active domain. If we look at the remaining task orders that were issued, the second most commonly used, about 30 to 40 of the task orders that were issued to date, were in the technical and engineering domain. So you're looking about 80% of the task orders that have been issued to date have been issued in the management and advisory domain and the technical and engineering domain. And then a smattering of task order level RFPs have come out in the other domains. Every domain has seen at least one RFP come out, but some of them have only seen 1 or 2 or 3. The other 5 domains, business administration, human capital, financial, social services, and marketing and public relations, are new and were created on Monday. Actually, they were technically created on Friday, January 9th, but they became available for companies to bid on Monday, on January 12th. Business administration, human capital, financial, social services, and marketing public relations. None of those exist right now until a company submits a bid and is evaluated and awarded, and then that domain will be up and running. How do you win? So the Oasis Plus, like almost every major contract vehicle of note of recent years, uses a scoring mechanism. The scoring is a self-scoring exercise in which you score yourself. The government provides you with an explanation of what documentation you would need to prove the score you've given yourself. You submit that documentation, and then the government evaluates your submission and validates whether they agree with you on how many points you say you have. And if they agree with you, then you win. And if they don't, then you would lose. On Oasis Plus, there are the points are called credits, and there are 50 available credits on Oasis Plus. If you self-score yourself at 36 credits, then you can win the small business contract. If you self-score yourself at 42 credits, then you can win the unrestricted contract. To slightly further complicate matters on Oasis Plus, each socioeconomic group has its own contract. So there is a service disabled veteran-owned small business version of Oasis Plus, but the socioeconomic contracts use the same qualifications matrices that the small business contracts use. So essentially, if you are a small business and you are a service disabled veteran-owned small business, you can evaluate yourself against the qualifications matrix to determine if you can get 36 credits. And then you can submit both a small business bid and a service disabled veteran-owned small business bid using the same submission. So let's talk a little bit more about what does it take to get 50 credits. The bulk of the credits are associated with five qualifying projects, QP. So the qualifying projects are where you get most of the credits. A qualifying project can be a federal prime contract or a federal prime task order. It can be a subcontract or it could be a commercial contract. The project has to have performance in the past 5 years from the date you submit your bid. So let's assume that you're submitting on April 1st of 2026. As long as the project had any performance after April 1st, 2021, which was 5 years ago, then you can use the project. The project has to have an annualized dollar value of $500,000 for almost all of the domains. And this is for the small business and the STVOSB contracts. So if you look at your own projects, you want to evaluate whether you have five projects in the last 5 years with at least $500,000 in annual value. So for example, let's say you have a 5-year subcontract that's worth $2.5 million if you and it got started 2 years ago. If you divide that $2.5 million by five, you get $500,000. So you are able to use that project because it falls in the period performance window and it's over $500,000 a year in value. So at a minimum, in order for you to bid on Oasis Plus, you need to have five qualifying projects over $500,000 a year in most of the domains. The primary exceptions are in the environmental and facilities domains. Those domains have lower thresholds of $250,000 a year. So in those domains, you need to have at least $250,000 a year in value on your projects. And then the other exception is the research and development vehicle domain. On that contract, your projects need to be at least $1 million a year in value. So kind of as an initial gate for you, look at your company, look at your prime contracts, your subcontracts, your commercial contracts, and determine if you have five projects that are over $500,000 a year with performance in the last 5 years, and then you can potentially bid on your own and bid as a prime. If you do not have five projects, it is unlikely that you would get enough credits to win. You are able to team on Oasis Plus, and so you could potentially find other companies that have qualifying projects, take your projects, take their projects, submit a bid together. As a general rule, I will advise you against that. Again, can you do it? You absolutely can. But keep in mind that there are already 1,000 companies that have won Oasis Plus on management advisory and small business, and several hundred companies on Oasis Plus STVOSB and management advisory. And each of the other domains has dozens of companies participating both on the STVOSB contract and on the small business contract. And so if you end up putting together a team to bid, you will, in my experience, find it very difficult to be competitive at the task order level. Now you can ignore me and go ahead and bid, and maybe you would win, and maybe you will be successful at the task order level. But I just want to share that warning with you that companies that we have seen that put together complicated teams of companies to bid don't tend to translate their win on the Oasis Plus contract level into task order wins. There is a requirement of sales on Oasis Plus in the first 5 years of operation. And toward the end of that 5 year period, GSA will look at your bid, at your contract, and say, hey, I don't see any awards. And if they see no awards, you will lose the contract. So again, while it's important to get on Oasis Plus and you want to participate, just keep in mind that you may not be ready for it yet. So if you're not ready for it yet, again, I encourage you to look at getting onto the GSA schedules and then winning task orders on that contract. And then you can also participate as a subcontractor to companies that are primes on Oasis Plus. And again, as long as your subcontracts are over $500,000 a year, those subcontracts will become projects that you can use as you mature your company and are capable of competing successfully at the task order level. So in some ways, I would think that GSA schedules are your first entree as a prime into the federal contracting space, and the Oasis Plus is your second. And again, I don't want to discourage you from bidding on Oasis Plus if you don't have 5 qualifying projects on your own. Just keep in mind that it will be more difficult for you to be competitive at the task order level. What's interesting again about Oasis Plus open season starting on Monday is it doesn't close, right? So the contract is open for you to bid anytime between now and December of 29. December of 29 is the end of the base period of Oasis Plus. And the open season may well continue past that, but at the very least, it's going to continue during the 5 year base period. So there's no due date for Oasis Plus. So you could potentially assess your company and discern how many credits you could get right now. And let's say you only get 24. I'm just making that number up. But that's not enough to win. If you have 24 credits, you cannot win on Oasis Plus Small Business or SDVOSB. But you will know how many points you have now and what is the gap in the points that you need to get in order to become competitive. So then you could create a business plan for yourself to close the gap between the 24 credits you have now and the 12 credits you need to be competitive and win on Oasis Plus on your own without teammates. And then work on executing that strategy. And let's say it takes you a year. So a year from now, you would have 36 credits and you could bid on your own. At that time, you can submit a proposal and you could win and get onto Oasis Plus and start competing at the task order level. Again, that would be my general advice to companies is again, instead of trying to put together a bid right now if you don't have enough credits to win on your own, to instead plot your strategy, discern how many credits you have now, figure out what you need to get to the 36 credits to win, again on your own, and then execute a business plan to get the subcontracts or prime contracts outside of Oasis Plus or commercial contracts that would enable you to win. There are also some credits available for other aspects of your company. So for example, if you get a secret or top secret facility clearance, that's 1 credit. If you get an ISO 9001, a CMMI level 2, a C3PA audit of your CMMC level 2, or an ISO 27001, those are worth 1 credit. So if you get any one of those, you get an extra credit. If you get a DCA audit of your cost accounting system, that's worth 2 credits. So those are some of the available kind of extra credits for companies. that again, if you don't have those now, if you don't have an ISO 9001, if you don't have a facility clearance, that can be part of your business plan to help you ultimately obtain 36 credits. When you bid on Oasis Plus, you can bid any one domain or you can bid multiple domains. So let's say you evaluate yourself and you could put together a successful submission and get 36 credits in the management and advisory domain. And your company also performs logistics work, but when you do that assessment, you're short on logistics. Let's say you're at 30 credits for logistics. You can still submit a proposal for the management and advisory domain now, receive award, and then create yourself a business plan to get those last 6 credits that you need to get 36 credits for the logistics domain. And whenever you accomplish that and get those credits, then you can submit a new domain request to add the logistics domain to your vehicle. And again, the Oasis Plus open season is open now and will not close. So I encourage you to, again, assess yourself on all the domains that make sense for your company. And even if you end up falling short in one or more domains, but you do have enough to bid on a particular domain, then I would encourage you to go ahead and bid on that domain and then create a business strategy for your company so that you could identify the other domains that you are in striking distance of. And again, it would give your company a clear understanding of what it needs to win in order to get enough credits to win Oasis Plus. I do think that for every company that participates in the professional services market, and that means if you look at this list of 13 domains and you see what your company does, that it should be part of your business strategy to get on Oasis Plus as a prime contractor. It just doesn't have to be right now, right? Again, it's going to be open for at least until December 29, so for at least the next 4 years essentially. So just think of this in the context of your broader business strategy for the federal market over the next 5 years. And don't feel like you have to get on right now to everything. You can ultimately, get on now to what you can get on, or plot a strategy to get on what you can get on later this year or next year, and then drive that strategy forward. But because of the government-wide, the Revolutionary Fire overhauls focus on government-wide contracts, because of the executive order on procurement consolidation, I do expect in these domains for Oasis Plus to become a centrally used contract for these kinds of requirements over the next few years. In the first year on Oasis Plus, I mentioned there were 240 task orders, task order RFPs issued and awarded. Those 240 task orders generated $2 billion in value for the companies that won them. So just in its first year of operation, Oasis Plus had $2 billion in task orders. The folks that are running Oasis Plus at GSA have aggressively targeted the goal of $20 billion per year in task order awards. And that's a very high number, but it's actually achievable and possible. And so I think we're going to really see dramatic increased use of Oasis Plus over the next few years. And so you want to identify a strategy for yourself to become a prime on Oasis Plus. And in the interim, become a subcontractor on Oasis Plus and participate in contract competition. Side note, before I move on to the other contracts, I mentioned that in the past year, 4 of the companies that we work with were acquired by other companies. All 4 of them were companies that we assisted in winning Oasis Plus, and all 4 of them had the Oasis Plus unrestricted contract. And the holding the Oasis Plus unrestricted contract made them more attractive to the buyers. So longer term, you want to look at the aspect of getting onto the Oasis Plus unrestricted contract. That contract has a different qualifications matrix than the small business contract, and it's harder to get on. So if you're a smaller company, I don't think it's likely that you would be competitive on the even to win Oasis Plus Unrestricted at this time. But once you get onto Oasis Plus Small Business, I would encourage you to then look at the Oasis Plus Unrestricted contract, assess where you are against the qualifications matrix and what your gap is, and then use that gap to drive your business strategy for the coming years after you become a prime on Oasis Plus Small Business. All right. So now I'm going to concentrate on the other IT services contracts. So now I'm going to talk about Vets 2. So Vets 2 is a GSA run contract vehicle that's available for use by any agency. Billions of dollars in IT services requirements have been placed on Vets 2. The contract was awarded in February of 2018 and it runs through February of 2028. So it's got about 2 years left in the ordering period for the contract. As far as a prime opportunity for you, this opportunity is not available. There will not be a Vets 3. Polaris Service Disabled Veteran-Owned Small Business, Polaris SDVOSB. The first tranche of those awards were made late last year, and that contract is up and running. And I'll talk about that more when I talk about Polaris. But Polaris SDVOSB will replace Vets 2. Right now, Vets 2 is still an operational contract. There are just over 30 prime contractors on the vehicle. GSA exercised the option for Vets 2 in February of 23. Prior to February 2023, there were 70 prime contractors on the vehicle. There were three criteria that the GSA considered to whether or not to exercise the option and allow companies to stay on Vets 2. The first was the company still small in the $34 million size standard that governs Vets 2? The second was, is the company still a service disabled veteran-owned small business? And the third was, did the company have any sales in the first 5 years on Vets 2? Much like I mentioned, the sales requirement on Oasis Plus. And at the end of the base period, 40 of the companies that were on, almost 40 of the companies that were on Vets 2 were removed from the contract. And most of them were removed because they failed to generate any sales on Vets 2. I mentioned that in particular as a cautionary tale on Oasis Plus because even if you have a mechanism through complicated teaming to get onto Oasis Plus at the IDIQ level, you need to assess whether you have a mechanism to be competitive at the task order level against companies that are much larger than you. And on Vets 2, on Vets 2, the majority of the companies that were on the contract were unable to be competitive successfully at the task order level. Were on Vets 2 for 5 years, received no task orders, and then were rolled off of the contract. But ultimately, there won't be a Vets 3. The Polaris SDVOSB contract, which has already been awarded, will replace Vets 2. So for now, the only opportunities for you, if you're not currently a prime on Vets 2, is to participate as a subcontractor. And that means getting to know the primes that are on Vets 2, discussing your capabilities with those companies and your customer intimacy, and discern if there are opportunities at the task order level where you could perform as a subcontractor to the primes on Vets 2. So now let's talk about Polaris. And I'll concentrate my remarks today on Polaris SDVOSB, but I'll discuss all of the contracts. So Polaris is a suite of IT services GWACS that are run by the General Services Administration. There's a small business version, so Polaris Small Business. And then there are three socioeconomic set-aside categories, SDVOSB, Hub Zone, and Woman-Owned Small Business. There is no 8A category on Polaris because GSA has another contract called STARS 3 that we'll talk about a little bit later. So the Polaris contract is currently in source selection. So at this moment, there is no opportunity for you to bid on Polaris. The Polaris SDVOSB and Polaris Hub Zone contracts are up and running, but they just got up and running just a few weeks ago. So we have seen some RFIs come out on Polaris SDVOSB and Polaris Hub Zone, but we have yet to see the first task order RFP come out on either vehicle. Keep in mind that VETS 2 is still operational, and the scope of VETS 2 is essentially the same as the scope of Polaris STV-USB. So some agencies may decide to use the VETS 2 contract for now. Others may decide to use the Polaris STV-USB contract. Ultimately, there will be 70 awardees on the Polaris STV-USB contract. And right now, there are 24 companies that have been selected for participation. GSA made the first tranche of awards on Polaris STV-USB in the fall, issued the notices to proceed, and got the contract up and running. Why did they do that? Because the on Polaris small business, there were 100 awardees announced. And at the time that GSA made the announcement of the 100 awardees, they let everybody else know that they did not win. 7 of the companies that were not selected for award on Polaris Small Business protested the contract at the Court of Federal Claims. And that Court of Federal Claims case has been dragging on for more than a year with no current end in sight. GSA did not want Polaris SCV-USB to get trapped in the Court of Federal Claims um, for the next 2 years. And so instead decided to move forward with the first tranche of awards. So they threw nobody out, and they have still 46 awards to make. But because nobody was thrown out, nobody could protest. So the contract was awarded and it is up and running. Sometime later this year, I expect GSA to make the remaining 46 awards and to issue Dear John letters to the companies that are not among the 46. And unfortunately, I do expect that some portion of those non-selected companies will likely file protests in the Court of Federal Claims. But those Court of Federal Claims protests will not stop the existing contract from running. If the companies that file protests in the Court of Federal Claims request a stop work order, the stop work order would only apply to the 46 companies that have yet to receive awards. The 24 companies that are currently on the contract can continue to participate in the contract, and agencies can continue to issue requirements at the task order level on that contract. So if what comes to pass, which again I think it will, then later this year 46 more awardees will be announced for Polaris STV-USB. There will be a subsequent set of protests filed in the Court of Federal Claims, and it will likely take a year to 2 years to resolve the protests in the Court of Federal Claims. So until that gets resolved, and until that final tranche of awardees is given the notice to proceed and they're up and running, there won't be an opportunity for you to bid on Polaris Service Disabled Veteran-Owned Small Business. Therefore, I expect the next on-ramp to occur in 2029 at the earliest. And that's because in the Polaris STV-USB contract did get up and running in December of 2024. And so the base period of the 5-year base period will end in 2029. And just like on VETS 2, there is a sales requirement on Polaris. And when we reach the end of the base period, companies will have to recertify their size status in the $34 million size standard, and will have to prove that they're still a service-disabled veteran-owned small business. So if you are not currently in the source selection process for Polaris STV-USB for the next few years, excuse me. I misspoke. So the contract, the Polaris SWSP contract got up and running in December 25. So the base period will end in December 2030. But the on-ramp that will become available will begin a year out from the end of the base period in December 2030. So that's why I think the next on-ramp will be in 2029. And that's because GSA will be able to predict how many companies will fall off of Polaris STV-USB in December 2030 because they have generated no sales, because they've sized out at the $34 million size standard, or because they're no longer STV-USB. And so they will open it up for new companies. So for those of you that are not currently in the mix for Polaris STV-USB, you've got some time. But the Polaris STV-USB also uses a scorecard. And once the Polaris SWSB full list of awardees is announced, we will know what the score is that will be necessary for you to win. So let's assume that the Polaris SWSB awardees are announced later this year. We'll have a sense of what that score will need to be. And then we can start evaluating whether you have what it takes to become a Polaris SWSB Prime when the on-ramp opens in 2029. And otherwise, I do encourage you to consider looking to be a subcontractor on Polaris S2USB and VETS 2. Your subcontract performance on either vehicle would be able to be used as relevant experience for Polaris S2USB when the on-ramp begins. As you just think ahead for potential participation as a prime on Polaris S2USB, the Polaris is the most competitive small business government-wide acquisition contract. So you do need very large contracts. You do need a DCA audit of your cost accounting system. Having a top secret facility clearance, a CMMI level 3, level 2 or higher, ISO 9001, ISO 27001 are all things that are going to get you enough points to potentially win. So you don't have to go out and do it now because remember, we're a few years out from this. But if you want to position yourself as a prime for Polaris SWSB, and sometime over the next few years, you'll want to invest in the CMMI, some of the ISOs, and ensuring that your company gets a DCA audit and a top secret facility clearance. Line 3, I'll touch on briefly. That is a government-wide contract that's run by GSA. It's an IT services contract, and it's unrestricted. Right now, there are no small businesses that participate in the Line 3 contract as a prime. Um, sorry, in the Alliant program as a prime. Currently, the contract that's in operation is called Alliant 2. And that contract has had north of $70 billion in task orders awarded to it. It's a phenomenal contract to participate in as a small business subcontractor. And so I encourage you to develop relationships with the primes that are on Alliant 2. Many of those same companies that are primes on Alliant 2 will win Alliant 3. Alliant 3 is currently in source selection. And GSA indicated late last week that they anticipate to make awards on Line 3 in this fiscal quarter, so before the end of March. I do expect Line 3 to use the same tranched approach of awards that Polaris did, Polaris STVOSB. So GSA plans to make 76 awards in total on Line 3, and I expect the awards that are announced later this quarter to be a subset of the 76. And I don't know how many, but let's guess maybe half. So maybe 35 to 40 initial awardees announced in the first tranche. The contract will get up and running, and then GSA will complete the remaining awards after Line 3 is up and running, and uh, in a sense protest proof at that point, because at that point any protest filed in the Court of Federal Claims that requests a stop work order would not apply to the companies that have already received awards on a Line 3. But this is by far the most competitive GWAC. Again, it's very rare for a small business to even be able to entertain bidding this as a prime. So again, I don't think you need to worry about this, getting this into your contract portfolio as a prime in the near future if you're a small business STVOSB. But as you work through the process of becoming a larger business, just keep in mind that at some point, if you're in the IT services space, your goal should be to become a prime on a Line 3. And the next opportunity to get onto that contract will be an on-ramp. The earliest that would occur is in 2029. So again, you have a few years to even consider that. Um, uh, but for now, you should consider potentially participating in Line 3 as a subcontractor, where you can generate very large subcontracts that could be used to get you onto Polaris, STVOSB, or position you well for other contract vehicles that may come out. So right now, NASA's SOUP 5 is in operation. It is a value-added reseller contract, so a commodities contract. This is one of the contracts that will be controlled in the future by the General Services Administration. And as I mentioned, GSA is in talks with NASA to take control of the SOUP program. SOUP 6 is expanding beyond the kind of value-added reseller space into IT services. So the new contract will still have a commodities value-added reseller component, and on SOUP 6 it's called Category A. And then larger IT services requirements will be performed under Category B. And then smaller IT services will be performed under Category C. Category C has a small business component, and within that small business component, task orders can be set aside for service disabled veteran-owned small businesses. So right now, SOUP 6 is in source selection. NASA's expectation is to make awards before May 1st, 26, and to issue the notice to proceed on May 1st, 2026. So assuming that holds to form, then the next opportunity, if you didn't bid SOUP 6, which is in source selection now, would be an on-ramp, which could occur in late 2028 or early 2029. So for the time being, if you didn't bid SOUP 6, as a prime, your opportunity is to participate as a sub once the contract gets up and running in May of 2026. SOUP is an easier contract to get onto than Polaris. It uses a pass-fail evaluation methodology in which you have to show demonstrated experience in the IT services space. For category C, you need to have an ISO 9001. And then for category B, you also have to have a CMMI level 2 or greater. So just as you plot your business strategy for the next few years, if you're a service disabled veteran or a small business, I think you should eye getting onto SOUP 6 a few years from now. And before that time comes, you should obtain an ISO 9001 certification because that's a requirement to participate in category C. STARS 3 is an 8A contract, so I won't spend a ton of time on this right now. It runs through July of 2029. The base 5-year base period for STARS 3 ends in July of 26, and the 3-year option is scheduled to be exercised in July. I do not believe there will be a STARS 4. The Revolutionary FAR overhaul instructed agencies to issue 8A to issue requirements in the 8A program competitively instead of on a sole source basis. Mo Numerically, most of the orders that are placed on STARS 3 are sole source. And the Revolutionary FAR overhaul requirements, which are now being um, implemented administratively across all of the agencies, tells buyers to stop placing sole source orders and to instead issue orders competitively on STARS 3 or on other GSA contracts like GSA schedules or Oasis Plus 8A. The Revolutionary FAR overhaul also includes a provision that indicates to buyers that they can move requirements out of the 8A program into the Service Disabled Veteran Small Business Program without prior approval from the Small Business Administration. One of the primary attractions of the 8A program to buyers right now is the ability to sole source. But the Revolutionary FAR overhaul is taking that value out of the 8A program. So it becomes, kind of, it makes it kind of agnostic for agencies whether they want to put a requirement in the 8A program or the Service Disabled Veteran-Owned Small Business Program. The 8A program also has a lot of political challenges facing it. Every company that's in the 8A program was requested by the Small Business Administration to submit a massive amount of financial documentation this month for an audit of their performance. Several agencies have placed moratoriums on the 8A program. So it's quite possible that a decent number of the requirements that are currently executed on the STARS 3 program could move out of the 8A program into the SWSB program, and those requirements could be issued either on Polaris SWSB, the GSA schedules, or Oasis Plus SWSB. So my advice to you, if you are not currently in the 8A program, but you are a service disabled veteran on a small business and you participate in IT services requirements, to become very good friends with your with companies that are in the 8A program because they may be looking at their requirements shifting out of the 8A program into the STVUSB program. So there's an opportunity for you with with the political environment being what it is for STARS 3 and for the 8A program, more opportunity for service disabled veteran and small businesses in this space. When the GSA is not committed publicly to exercise the option on STARS 3, which is supposed to occur in July 26th, let's assume they do. Just like Polaris, just like Oasis Plus, just like the schedules, there's a sales requirement on STARS 3. There are currently 1,100 companies on STARS 3. Most of those companies have received no task orders. And so the number of primes, if GSA exercises the option on STARS 3, will fall to under 400 in July of 26. That doesn't mean there won't be any requirements placed on STARS 3, but I just wanted to flag to you the potential opportunity for service disabled veteran or small business, given the various aspects of the political environment and the regulatory environment that are making use of the 8A program and the STARS 3 program less likely. Finally, I'll cover CISP3 and CISP3 small business in the next 2 minutes, and then we'll open for questions. These contracts currently run through April of 2026. They are administered by the NIH. And as I mentioned, GSA is in discussions with NIH to take control of these programs. Ricky Clark, who's the program manager for CISP3 and CISP3 small business, has indicated publicly that he is seeking an extension of the CISP3 and CISP3 small business programs. I would conjecture that that extension will go through September 30th of 2026. So this contract will likely continue to be running through the remainder of this fiscal year. The replacement contract for this vehicle is called CIOSP4. It has been in source selection and protest for 4 years. If it does ultimately get awarded in 2026, I believe the next opportunity for you to participate as a prime on the contract would be no earlier than 2028. Now, this is me speaking. I expect the CIOSP4 vehicle not to be awarded. I expect the contract to be canceled entirely, and I expect these vehicles to be shut down in 2026. One theoretical possibility is that this contract could remain operational and be exclusive to the Health and Human Services Department. I actually think that is less likely than GSA assuming control of these vehicles and then overseeing the wind down of these programs over the course of 2026. So in conclusion, I think the most important vehicles for you to focus on in this coming year are the GSA schedules and Oasis Plus, and then preparation for participation in the Polaris SDVOSB program when the on-ramp opens in a few years. And then at the subcontract level, I encourage you to participate in all of these programs because all of the subcontracts that you would win that are over $500,000 a year in value would be usable as qualifying projects or relevant experience on all of the contracts. And then ultimately, I do think SOUP 6 will be an opportunity for you during the on-ramp, which I expect to occur in a few years for the Category C component of the contract. With that, I'll hand it over to Barbara so we can move into questions.
Well, hello. Well, thank you so much, Brian. Oh my gosh, so much information. I have 2 pages of notes. I learned so much. And thank you. Thank you for the great explanation. And we do have quite a few questions, and I see everybody's clapping and hearts, and it was fantastic. And of course, known you for a very long time, and you're a trusted resource out there for many. So let's just jump right into the questions in the time we have. A lot of great questions here. I'll read them off, and we'll try to get through as many as we can. Where does HCATS fit in with GWACS?
So the Human Capital and Training Solutions contract, HCATS, is a contract that ends later this year.
Okay.
It will be replaced by the Human Capital domain on Oasis Plus,
Oh,
which, as
okay.
I mentioned, is now up and running.
Yeah.
So any of you that perform human capital support or training support should definitely evaluate whether you could win the Oasis Plus Human Capital domain. Because of those five new domains, I think that human capital domain will be the most active because all of the work that's currently on the HCATS contract will transition to the Oasis Plus Human Capital domain. And then a
Okay.
lot of other work in that environment will also come to Oasis Plus Human Capital because of the revolutionary FAR overhaul.
Great. Okay. Good advice. Thank you. For Oasis Plus, what kind of past performance is required if you are new? Is there a limit on the number of contractors that can be primes in a domain? And is key pointers to be able to get the credits? Can joint ventures also try to become a prime? We didn't talk about JVs, and but if you could, there were three questions in that one, all bundled in.
Yeah, so I'll start with the last one. So joint ventures can absolutely participate in the Oasis Plus program. Again, I would put the same caveat I did in terms of bringing in teaming partners. Um, Again, sometimes things don't work out in the relationship between the companies in a joint venture. And again, oftentimes joint ventures find it more challenging to be competitive at the task order level.
Okay.
But you can absolutely participate as a joint venture if you are in a mentor protege joint venture in the SCVUSB program and you are submitting a bid on the Oasis Plus SDVUSB contract, then one of the projects has to come from the SDVUSB protege. And
Okay.
as a general rule on the SDVUSB contracts, two of the five qualifying projects have to come from a service disabled veteran-owned small business.
Okay.
And you cannot reuse projects in one proposal that you used in another. So if you were to bid your own SDVOSB submission, and also have your joint venture bid, and you both used the same project, that project would be eliminated from both of your bids. You would likely neither of you would win, and you would be banned from submitting another submission for 6 months. So be very careful when you're considering teaming or joint venturing on Oasis Plus.
Oh, good advice. Thank you.
Oh, and
Thank you.
sorry, can you repeat the other two questions, Barbara? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so well, I think it'd have to come back. I think it marked it as red if my team could bring it back. I think
Okay,
I
sorry.
lost it. Hopefully we'll bring that back. I
Okay.
apologize. What makes a government customer choose one vehicle over another? Is it based on fee, on domain experience, on the vehicle task order management, or is it something else? With this consolidation, though, is there still many vehicles and lots of costs for small business to pursue them all? I'd like to focus on fewer, more valuable vehicle pursuits. Good
Yeah,
question.
so
So, you can't do them all. It can be
right.
competitive probably on them all, but how does a customer choose?
Yeah. Well, first of all, as a company, these are the most important. These are the most important contracts. So lots of agencies may have various ones that are out there. These are the ones you should concentrate on.
Okay.
How do agencies choose? So first of all, they look at the scope, right? And does the scope of the requirement align with the scope of the contract? So again, an IT services requirement is most likely going to either go to the GSA schedules, the IT services aspects of the schedules, or to one of the IT services GWACS. If it's a, systems engineering kind of contract, that falls very much in the technical and engineering domain on Oasis Plus. So the buyer may choose that way. The second consideration is, has the agency told everybody to use a contract? So the Air Force, for example, has told everybody use Oasis Plus. So the Air Force is the biggest user of the Oasis Plus contract vehicle and will continue to be. The Homeland Security Department has instructed buyers to use Oasis Plus. And in fact, DHS had a contract called PAX 2, which was a service disabled veteran small business contract. They had issued the PAX 3 recompete. It was in source selection, and DHS canceled that contract and instead instructed agencies to use Oasis Plus. And I think we'll see more agencies make this determination to use Oasis Plus. The Missile Defense Agency, even though it created a vehicle for science and technology requirements called SHIELD, is a heavy user of Oasis Plus and is putting a lot of requirements out on the Oasis Plus contract.
Hmm.
The Veterans Affairs Department has not historically been a major user of Oasis Plus, but my expectation is that the requirements that are currently under the Vector contract will transition to Oasis Plus over the coming years. So any of you that participate in the Vector program, you should definitely consider getting onto the Oasis Plus program now. And then the last question was about contract access fees. The contract access fee is a consideration, particularly at the Department of War. There are many buyers that don't like the access fees. The industrial funding fee is the access fee on the schedules, and it is 0.75% of order value, which is really not that much. But for example, if a Navy buyer is putting out a requirement on Seaport, it costs zero in access fee, but they would have to factor in the industrial funding fee on the schedules. And that's why the schedules have historically been less attractive to many of the buyers at the Department of War. The Oasis Plus contract has a 0.15% access fee, so it's a significant discount to the GSA schedules, and that's obviously made it more attractive to Department of War buyers. And across the board, Department of War buyers are the biggest users of Oasis Plus. So all of those things kind of become factors in buyers deciding which vehicles to use.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, when you're, a small number, but when you're doing billions, it adds up to a real number.
Yep.
I'm sure. I'm sure. Thank you. If you have one project over 5 years that is more than 1 million, can you break that one project down, or does it qualify as one effort?
Yeah, so a project is a task order or a contract, but you can use a project in multiple domains. So in this example, where the project, I'm assuming the project is over $1 million per year, because remember it's annual value,
Yeah.
then that project can be used in more than one domain. And kind of one rule of thumb might be to consider that if you take that $1 million and divide it by two, that's 500,000 a year. Since the annual threshold limit in each domain is 500,000, then you could theoretically use that project in two domains.
Okay, that's good deal. Good to know. Is there any limitation that prevents a JV from bidding on Oasis? Any limitation that prevents a JV from bidding on Oasis?
I think I kind of went over that again. The main thing is you don't want to double dip projects, and
Yeah.
there are certain requirements that certain elements have to come from the protege or from companies that hold the SDVOSB designation. It's
Hmm.
somewhat complicated, so I definitely encourage you to download the recent amendment and I'm sorry to say, read the whole thing. And I know it's a lot. It is a lot, but it's there's all of that is in there. You just have to kind of parse through it.
Yeah, thank you. You always should read. Always should read and understand. Yeah. Do we already have to be a prime to qualify for Polaris?
No, you can use subcontract experience to bid on Polaris. Again, just keep in mind we're a couple years out from being able to submit. As a general rule, prime contracts are worth more than subcontracts in the scoring system on Polaris. So it is theoretically possible for you to bid and win with entirely subcontract performance on Polaris, but it is more likely for you to be able to put a competitive score if you have a mix of prime contracts included in your relevant experience.
But you'll get on Polaris, getting back to your point where you make the monies on the task order. Will you be competitive on the task order?
That's important too. Yep. Yeah, because a lot of times at the task order level, the buyers will want you to demonstrate previous prime performance
Okay.
to be competitive.
Yeah, you got to look at that historically to see. Yeah. We are applying for the Oasis Plus. We are qualified for both unrestricted and small business sections. From a speed of award standpoint, should I apply for both at the same time or just one initially?
Yeah, you can sequence your submissions on Oasis Plus, and again, there's nothing preventing you from doing that. So again, when you put in your submission, you're kind of building a past performance library. And when you get into the submission process, you can discern it may make sense for you to just go ahead and submit both at the same time because you may be using the same projects, or you may be able to move forward more quickly on one or the other. And if you can move more quickly on one or the other, then you could certainly just submit the one that you can move faster on first, and then go back later and submit the other one because they would be evaluated independently.
Okay, good advice. Thank you. Thank you. If there is a specific amount of annually set, and let me see, is there a specific amount annually set in sales for Polaris?
No, so Polaris doesn't exist now, and
Right.
the predecessor contract was called Alliance Small Business, and it has not actually been in operation for about 9 years. So there's no set number. So I think what we're going to see is, again, agencies evaluating the scope of the requirements, and if it makes sense, move it to the vehicle. I think it will be a little bit slow at first, and then probably pick up speed as more agencies, evaluate the contract and decide they want to use it. The old contract was seeing $4 to $5 billion a year in work, and I think it's reasonable to expect that it will ultimately get to that. But in the next couple of years, it will probably be on a slow increase toward that number.
But do you have to sell a certain amount to stay compliant within so you don't get kicked off? What is
Oh,
the end?
not per year. It's evaluated at the end of the base period. And I
Okay.
honestly do not remember what that number is.
Okay.
It's in Section H of the contract if you want
But
to
do
look
you
it up.
expect one though? I assume, I mean, all of them seem to have that cadence or that requirement.
Yeah, right. They want to see that you're actually performing on the
Yeah.
contract or you get
Yeah.
kicked off.
Yeah. Yeah. Not just holding a spot, right? If a JV wins a place on Oasis Plus, can the JV continue to compete on all task orders for the life of Oasis Plus, or will the JV be prevented from bidding at the 2 year point?
Yeah, once a JV wins a contract like Oasis Plus, a 2 year clock does start ticking, but that's at the contract level, not at the task order level. So let's say the first thing the JV wins is Oasis Plus, and it's on April 1st, 26. You have until April 28th to win any other contracts. But at the task order level on Oasis Plus, you'll be able to continue to compete for the first 5 year base period of the contract. So you have a 5 year window, so it kind of extends your ability to compete beyond the 2 year window that only applies at the contract level.
Gosh, oh, great news. That's great. Um, any advice on using these companies that help create the bid?
Well, I'm one of the companies that creates those bids, so I love it. No, I'm just kidding. If you
Yeah,
can certainly do it on your own. And
sure.
then you can if you are there's me, there's other folks out there that support it. Again, our company helped 140 companies win more than 500 domains the first time. I encourage you to look at their track record since we've all seen Oasis Plus, before.
Yeah, and here's one that was in our that showed up in the chat. And since we have a minute here, we have had a GSA contract for the past 3 years. How do we get on the blanket purchase agreements?
So the blanket purchase agreements are issued as RFQs on the GSA schedules. And so you want to, look out for those blanket purchase agreement opportunities. Oftentimes, the agency will issue an RFI that says, "Hey, we plan to do a blanket purchase agreement." You should definitely respond to the RFI because the buyer has the ability to send the RFQ only to the companies that respond to the RFI. So if you don't respond to the RFI, you may not get the RFQ, and then you'd miss the opportunity to participate in the BPA. So on eBuy, when RFIs come out, look at them. If they say they're going to be a VPA, absolutely respond to the RFI and indicate you want to participate in the RFQ.
That's great. That's great. Well, thank you again so much. We're out of time, but there's a few more questions, and I'll get those over to you. This is incredible information, great advice, and truly, all roads do lead to GSA, and best I can tell, to Oasis as well. So,
Mhm.
but it gave us a strategy if you're not ready for Oasis. How do you prepare? And 2029 seems to be it'll be here in 5 minutes. I know it sounds far away, but so did 2023 seems like yesterday, right?
Right. Mhm.
So now's the time to prepare. So thank you so much. And I'm seeing wonderful positive feedback, and we truly appreciate you taking the time to share your insights and sticking around to tackle all these additional questions. And as I mentioned, we'll try to have some follow up on some that we didn't get to. And here's some good news as well. The slides and the video recordings from all 4 sessions in this workshop series are now complete and will be provided to you shortly. So look for those in your inbox. You'll have everything you need to reference and revisit as you implement these strategies in your business. Um, we have taught you how to fish, the rules, the compliance, policy, uh, strategies on how to enter and scale, but you have to certainly implement these strategies in your business to reap the benefits. Thank you so much for joining us today and for being with us throughout this entire series. We appreciate all your insightful questions and engagement, and special thank you to our SBA and our speaker, Brian Friel, for making this webinar possible. Before we wrap up, you'll see a brief anonymous survey appear on your screen. It would mean a lot to us and our SBA partners if you take a moment to complete it. Your feedback is invaluable as we continue to enhance our programs to serve you better. Thanks again for being here. We've completed our GSA series, but your learning journey doesn't stop here. Next Thursday, same place, same time at 11 a.m., we're hosting Conquering CMMC, Staying Compliant and Competitive. And oh, by the way, I did hear Brian Friel just mention a few times that part of the scoring is CMMC, level 2, mind you, as well. So if this is something you're going to pursue near and long term, you need to understand CMMC. If you're pursuing DoD contracts or working in the defense industrial base, CMMC compliance is critical to your success. Join us when CMMC experts from Cohn-Resnick break down what you need to know in this rapidly changing landscape to remain compliant and competitive. This is a must-attend session for anyone working in the defense contracting or looking to pursue opportunities either as a prime or a sub. Registration is open now. Don't miss it. And in closing, congratulations on attending All Roads Lead to GSA Workshop Series. You've gained insights from legal experts, GSA leadership, tactical advisors, and growth strategists. Now it's time to put it all into action. And thank you to our partners at SBA for supporting your continued success in the federal marketplace. And thank you for your engagement here, your questions, and your commitment to growing stronger in the federal marketplace. We're excited to see where these strategies take your business. And I look forward to seeing you all next Thursday for our CMMC session. Again, thank you, Brian, and be well, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.